What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living in West Africa. Right now, I am in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Shout out to Pearl Hotel. And if you want to know how I feel living in Sierra Leone for 7 months, then this is the video for you. Live. We are live on all platforms. We're live on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're live on we're live everywhere. All right, so as always, I want to know where you guys are watching from. First of all, can you hear me? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you can hear me. And then also, I want to know where you're watching from. So we got a bunch of people joining from Instagram. Where are you guys watching from? I see a Palestinian flag here. I see a few other folks joining. Where are you guys watching from? And can you hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up in the chat so I know you can hear me. All right, Dagger 4130 said you can hear me. Stone said you can hear me. The Real KD said you can hear me. Lights don't go. Of course. Saludo. Afro Parenting Village. What up, Joe? Accra in the house. What's up? What's up? What's up? The Real KD says Instagram. Okay, Tiffany's from Memphis. Pamela said you can hear me. Cool. IG Costa Rica. Nice. I Win is watching on IG from Costa Rica. Shout out to Costa Rica. Anita Howard said you can hear me. Lights don't come. We got light again. Some of the light. Hold on, let me see. Let me get the rest of the light going. Hold on 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. Let me know where you guys are watching from, though. I'm gonna set up the ring light again. Give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay, no, I won't set up the ring light because the light went out again. Yeah, welcome to the live, guys. This is real life in West Africa, specifically in Sierra Leone. All right, so we got Jax from South Carolina. Marie is here. What's up? Hello. From Columbus, Ohio. Marie's from Columbus. Andy G is from North Carolina. We got Ghana Scrapers watching from Ghana. We got, is it Flakita? Flakita. San Diego. You said you can hear me. Johnny B from Austin. The Real KD from London. I Win, You Win says the same thing happens in Costa Rica. That light goes out all the time. Let's see who else we got. We got hold on. We got a bunch of people from a bunch of different places. African Prince says love and gratitude from 1,000 Hills. What else we got? We got Memphis, Tennessee in the house. Tiffany Scorpio Jackson is watching from Memphis. All right, cool. All right. So we're going to talk about it. 7 months living in Sierra Leone. We are coming up on my 3rd year anniversary living in West Africa. Let me put the ring light on so that this backlight doesn't make me so dark. And I'm going to fix some of the lights. So keep telling me where you guys are watching from. And I will fix the lighting in 1 second. Hold on 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. I'll be right back, guys. Just tell me where you guys are watching from. I know you're not seeing me on screen. I'll be right back. There we go. There we go. Now we got light. Now we have light. You can see me now. Cool. All right, what do we got? We got a bunch of people from all over the world, really. North Carolina from Mark Beavers from North Carolina. What about TikTok? You guys on TikTok, where you guys watching from? Today, I don't have my glasses-less call today, live today. Sammy H is laughing because the light went out. Okay, Mute says, hi, long time, bro, long time. The Real Source says, Couche, what's up, The Real Source? All right, cool. So for those of you who don't know me, Jotagua, Sierra Leonean American. I live in Sierra Leone currently, back and forth through all over the world. But most recently, I lived in Ghana for 2 years before moving to Sierra Leone. My parents were both born and raised here. And so I'm building a property on land. We bought some land here. And so my time in Sierra Leone has been dedicated to building on this property. And I moved in not too long ago. So there'll be some videos on that move and what that's been like living in a guest house on my property. Challenges, the good, the bad, the ugly. You guys will get all of that. I also consult people moving to the continent of Africa. So if anybody wants to move to the continent, wants to start a business here, just wants to get an idea from someone who's lived in the West and who has moved to West Africa, what that experience might be like, I'm definitely helpful for that. I also have a social media agency, which we'll talk about today. So I help brands basically grow their social media following. As you can see, I have now done that across a number of different platforms. I'm proud to say I've gotten 20K followers on TikTok. We have 165, I think, 165 or so on Instagram. We have 13,500 on YouTube. We got over 10,000 on Threads. We're approaching 10,000 on Twitter. So I have learned the game of building a social media platform, and I want to help brands do that. So that's African brands or diasporan brands focusing on an African audience or diasporan audience. So I do that with my social media agency. The platform is all about connecting the diaspora and the Africans together to ensure that we understand what's happening on the continent of Africa and they understand what's happening in the diaspora. And so that way it helps us come closer together, build this bridge so that we can thrive together. Because there's so many people here in Africa that aren't Africans that are benefiting from the continent of Africa, right? We talk a lot about what's happening in the Congo. Every country has its issues where non-indigenous people are benefiting the most from the resources on the continent of Africa. And we want to start changing that. And this platform is meant to bring people together. So the goal with this platform is three things. Get people to visit. Well, no, four things really. To educate both groups, get diasporans to visit, eventually get diasporans to move, and then also to get diasporans to invest on the continent of Africa. Diversify your interests. You don't want to be just focused on your investments, if you have investments in the States, because I believe that the United States, although it's very powerful and it's an amazing country and it's my birthplace, I will never give up my blue passport. It will not always be on top. If you think about it, no manufacturing is done in the United States. All manufacturing is elsewhere. That means that if there is a major war or if there's anything that happens where the United States requires extra hands on deck, there aren't the facilities or the skill sets to do most of those things that are necessary. And so for me, my belief system is diversify your interests and your assets and buy land outside of the United States, buy land in the United States, but buy land outside of the United States and buy in places that in 20, 30 years, you'll get 10 extra return and you don't have to put as much down. I bought 5 acres of land for less than what my down payment was for a house that I paid for in Seattle with 3 other people, right? So that just gives you an idea of what you can do. And of course, that land in the next 5 to 10 years is projected to be worth the amount per plot of land that I paid for the acreage. So I have 50 plots. So 50 times 6K is what the land is supposed to be worth in the next 10 to 15 years. So just contextually, just to give you an idea of why it makes sense to invest outside of America or outside of the West on the continent of Africa. All right, cool. Zakiah is here from Philadelphia. And we got OK Muse said, did you get more info on the Door of Return Festival, which took place recently in Lagos? I do not know anything that happened in Lagos recently, to be honest with you. This Door of Return Festival, I was not familiar with it, but I can look into it for sure and talk about it on a later date. But I was not aware of it, actually. All right, so today's content. Sorry, I had to hydrate real quick. Today's conversation is about my 7 months here in Sierra Leone. I'm going on 3 years. I'll do a 3 years in Africa kind of review later on. That'll come in December, because right around a busy time in December is when I came here. I came on December 26th, 2020. Was when I officially made the move to West Africa. I moved to Ghana first, and then I was there, Ghana for 2 years, and back and forth to Sierra Leone. And we'll talk about what the 3 years have been like, because many of you are new to the platform. Not everybody is aware of everything that's been going on. So we'll talk about the 3 years. We'll do like a 3 years in review, because a lot has happened in 3 years. A lot has happened in 3 years. As far as the 7 months in Sierra Leone in comparison to when I was living in Ghana, it has been a very interesting ride so far, we'll say, to say the least. So real quick, just a couple people join in. Forever says, Kushe everyone. What's up, Forever? And Lenora says, hello. What's up, Lenora? Welcome to the live. Okay. So in a nutshell, what can I say? We've done a couple of lives about my experience in Sierra Leone so far. And so for those of you who are going to get your citizenship this month, there are many of you who follow the live who are getting your citizenship. And maybe I should give some backstory for those of you who are watching and who aren't aware. If you do African ancestry, specifically African ancestry, they are recognized by the government. If you have Sierra Leonean DNA, you can get your citizenship in Sierra Leone. We don't know how that's going to change, what's going to change from it, but as of right now, that is the case. They do 2 times a year where people come to get their citizenship. It happens in April, right around Sierra Leone's independence. And then it also happens in November. And so as of right now, people are gearing up to come here now to get their citizenship. And so I know many of you follow me because I'm one of the few people who does a lot of content in Sierra Leone, and having been from the West, so I have your context, I have your experience. So when I talk about Sierra Leone, it's coming from someone who's lived in the West. So those folks are coming to get their citizenship. If you get your citizenship, there are just some things that you'll need to know about what it's like staying in Sierra Leone. The last couple of weeks I've done lives. 2 weeks ago and the week prior to that, I did a live about why you shouldn't move to Africa unless there are certain things you do first. And then I did a live about why you should move to Africa, and here's why. I want to be very clear that moving to the continent of Africa has been the best decision I have ever made in my life, right? But that best decision came with a lot of headaches and a lot of challenges. A lot of challenges. So somebody just asked a question. Okay, before I move into some of those challenges and those headaches, somebody did just ask a question. How do I do my African ancestry? Just go to African ancestry. Just Google African ancestry. Everything will be there on their website. So let me tell you guys something. There have been frustrations in my personal life with dating. There have been frustrations in my career. There have been frustrations in attempting to move into a new career. There have been frustrations with my business, starting a business. There have been frustrations with construction on my house. There are so many different things that hit you one by one that if you're not strong, it'll allow you to give up. The thing about dealing with a country that is as a developing nation, right? And Ghana can actually go into that category as well, even though it's further along than Sierra Leone. There are going to be things that you're used to coming from the West that just don't happen in the same way that it happens here. And you are not going to be able to change everything right away. You can change the circle around you, you can make adjustments, and sometimes you just need to go with the flow. Let me give you some examples of some of the frustrations and some of the things that I've learned along the way. So, no presentation today, we're just talking, and I'm going off memory here. I have gone through 3 contractors on the property that I'm building right now. 3 contractors. So, okay, 3 contractors. You might say, that probably happens everywhere. I had 6 contractors all pitch that they be the ones to work on my house, right? Or the house that we're building, I should say, our house, because there'll be other people potentially living there. And I had 6 different people. I looked at pricing. I looked at work that they've already done. I met with them on a number of occasions. I did everything that I could to get as much information as I could before I went into business with any one of them. So my number 1 selection was someone who went to high school and college in the States, second cousin of mine, and someone who, some people in my family, they knew his family pretty well. So I myself thought, okay, this is probably a good selection because he understands the aesthetic. I see what he's building. I like how it looks. I would like to build that. There were a couple of red flags that I ignored when I spoke to him. Specifically, not only his political affiliations in the States, but who he admired and why. Should have been something that let me know why. And everyone has their choice of who they choose as a political, in their politics, whatever. I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I'm left leaning, but it really doesn't matter to me if you're Republican, Democrat. I don't care, right? I always want to know why, though. His reasoning was very strange for who his candidate was and why. And it was all the negative things that he said he admired as opposed to policy. So those were things that should have been a red flag. But anyway, I went with him anyway, learned my lesson. He ended up starting a whole nother business, completely abandoning the project and costing me about $2,000 extra dollars. $4,000 in the next 4 months is what ended up costing me over the next 4 months. My second place person on the list, I utilized them, and that guy, unfortunately, what he was doing was he got paid from one client, would keep that money, waited till he got paid from the next client, then use that to work on the original client's product. Man, this is another frustration here. The light situation. So in case, that's the reason why I go live from here, because they have backup lighting. But this could be a frustration for many people. As you can imagine, right? Like, this light has gone out, I think, twice throughout this discussion. And they have a generator here, but it has been a challenge here. This is not just a challenge here. Light goes out in many countries around the continent. So it's just a thing that happens. But we're back. Let there be light. And then again, my ring lights, the plug for my ring light is so far away that I have to get up and walk around to turn it on. But I may just do that here in a second. But you guys can see me, right? I think you guys can all see me. Everybody can see me from wherever you are, right? Okay, cool. So with the contractor, many, many frustrations. I got to my third contractor. Now he is actually pretty good. Pricing isn't too bad. He's pretty good at what he does. The main challenge I have with him is just making sure he follows through on everything in the timeline that he says he's going to do it. So that's just something that you have to do. You just have to take the extra steps. So that's in the construction piece, right? But there are ways to ensure that everything you need to get done gets done. You just need to spend more money. You need to pay an architect that's going to oversee them, or you need to find someone who has a company that generally has a westernized mindset. You might be able to find someone locally born and raised, but someone who thinks about being on time, who is going to ensure that they proactively communicate with you, right? And they're also going to let you know when something is going wrong. They're not going to hide it from you and wait to the last possible second where there's nothing you can do about it. So I think the way you can figure that out is if you have them start by building a small structure on your property, whether that's your fence, which is a wall around your property, or a guest house, or a boys' quarters or your servants' quarters. Have them do something smaller first to get an idea of their skill set and whether or not they're going to be on point. And that determines whether or not you move forward with them. So, like my fence was done by one person, moved on. Excavation of the land and the foundation of the guest house was done by a second person, had to move on. The third person is working on the guest house, and I will not start the main house without having someone overseeing him. Okay, so a couple things that people are talking about. I think this is interesting. So Africa Emerge says they're watching Florida. Lenora said growing pains, of course. Jay Stokes says, I wish more African countries other than Sierra Leone would give citizenship people based on ancestry. I do too. Unfortunately, they don't as of yet. But I think as Sierra Leone does a better job of communicating this, I think other countries might find it interesting and might do it. I think what some countries fear is citizenship comes with a lot of great things. Ability to buy land, ability to start a business. It makes things easier for you to move within a country. And although those things are all beneficial to certain people, there may be other people with not so great intentions that can get citizenship, and they're always want to try to vet through some people. I think Sierra Leone it was smart for them to allow the interpretation of the Constitution to allow for other people with Sierra Leonean ancestry to apply for citizenship. But it actually wasn't written in the Constitution as such. It was just interpreted that way by an individual, and then it became a policy. So I think that's how you have to look at some of the other constitutions for other countries. From what I understand, it wasn't as if this was an initiative that was just set up right away. Back in 2013 or so, somebody had read an amendment to the Constitution and then pushed for this. So it's something you might think about for other countries and see if there's something you could push with their governments. Unakusheo mi fambolem. So Africa Emerging saying hello to everyone, my family. Hello, my family. John Kofi says, greetings, fam. Separation is the only solution, and plan B is Africa. Yeah, I do think separation from the United States is a solution. I don't want to say the only solution, because I do think it's great to have investments in the United States as well. I would not be a person who's an absolutist about leaving the United States. Having credit in the United States and having investments in the United States is still good. You just want to also do it elsewhere. If you have to choose one or the other, start visiting here and start thinking about here, the continent of Africa. Figure out what makes the most sense for you. One thing that John Kofi says is America has 500 years. Africa only has 60 years. Do the math, family. So yeah, so this is a point I've actually said many times. I appreciate you saying that. But I actually have been saying this for the last 3 years since I've had this platform. When you think about any country, and sorry if you guys have already heard this, but clearly John hasn't heard me say this before. So if you guys have heard me say this before, John might be new to the platform, so he doesn't know this. But I've said this on many occasions. So most of the countries in Africa in their current iteration are 70 years or younger, right? And so any country in the West in its first 70 years was like destitute. They were not real countries, right? They didn't resemble anything that they resemble now. If you consider England in its first 70 years, its current iteration, it was still considered part of the Dark Ages, right? If you look at the United States in its first 70 years, you had a Revolutionary War and then a Civil War that came a little bit later than that, but it was the Wild Wild West, right? I mean, you have movie westerns that are made about how they were just slaughtering Native Americans, and they were just moving to new towns, and there was pillaging and all kinds of robbery and all kinds of crazy stuff happening in America. The thing that the West had that helped them become the countries that they are now is the resources that they took from the continent of Africa, ironically, right? So, the monarchy in England right now, most of its wealth came from what it got from its provinces, right, that it owned throughout its history, the modern history of England. And the United States is built obviously on the slave trade, right? Its number one export was cotton. That was like the 1/3 of the world's, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, 1/3 of the world. Don't misquote me. It's in that percentage, 1/3 of like the world's exports. Period. I think was cotton at the time, and the United States had free labor to pick all the cotton they needed to grow industries. Built the railroads, not just Africans, but also Chinese and Native Americans were used for a lot of the different things that built what ended up becoming the United States of America. So yes, I'm very clear on that, John, that America has had really 500 years, you say, but 300 years in its current iteration. England has had it, and then also the rest of Europe, who have all benefited from what they've been able to get from the continent of Africa, right? So I'm under no illusion of that. It does not mean that there aren't still challenges here on the continent of Africa, and that's really important to speak about. I'm not going to talk to you as somebody who's going to sugarcoat anything, right? Because if I want people to move here, but I want people to visit here, and I want people to invest, but I don't want people to do it based on something that's not real, right? There are many people who plan to come to the continent based on a couple of YouTube videos where people are speaking about it and through rose-colored glasses as if everything every day is amazing. And it's not. You are going to run into challenges on the continent, especially in West Africa. And so you just have to be prepared for it. And that's what I'm doing here, is making sure that people understand that you are going to run into challenges. But Marie agrees with John, as do I. He also says we'll build better, of course. Exactly, we definitely will. 111 says, thank you for connecting the minds. We would like to bring you to more larger audience. Could you please tell us how to contact you privately? Yeah, of course. You can email me. You know what? Let me do this. Put up a banner. So my email is there, authenticafricanlife@gmail.com. You can email me there. Yeah, let's definitely talk. Ramatu wants to go live. I'm not going to go live with you, Ramatu, right now, but stay tuned and come back again. I want to get through some more comments first, and then we'll go live in the second half of this. John Kofi says, so let's get busy. We definitely got to get busy on getting people here to the continent, for sure. Making says, yep. And then Marie Shai says, that's understandable. Speaking about the time difference between what's happened in Americas and in the West versus what's happening on the continent. Stuart Aaron Productions asked a very good question. What is the clear best way for us to invest? That's a great question. And there isn't just one clear best way to invest. I think first things first is you can look into some investing communities that are investing in real estate. If you want to invest in companies, you can look at incubators like MEST. I don't know how they take outside funding. MEST, MEST. There's also Google for Startups. I don't know how they take outside funding. There's Founders Institute. There are incubators and accelerators on the continent that take smaller amounts of money. You can come in and invest with them depending on how much cash you have. There's also the ability to invest in real estate. Now, it depends on what you want to buy. You want to buy plots of land, you want to build, you want to rent it out, you can do that. That's something you can consult with me on. Email me and we can get you a consulting session to do that. You can also invest in individualized businesses. I know a couple of businesses here that are looking for investments and they're working through how they're going to repay those investments. So there are a couple different ways that you can invest, but there isn't one easy way. I think you want to get in touch with people like myself who are offering services to help you get there. So yeah, but I am working on a fund later on down the line where I will gather people's resources and finances and invest in companies on the continent. Because of the lighting, I'm gonna go turn on the ring light. So I'm gonna get into the next topic, which I think you guys might find interesting, and that is work experience. Like I bet you guys thought I was gonna say dating, which I will get to in a second. But the work experience is what I will talk about next. Working on the continent. That is going to be the next conversation we have here. Is working on the continent, because that comes with its frustrations as well, depending on what country and where you are. So I worked for a company, an e-commerce company here in Ghana, actually in West Africa, but I was in Ghana, and it was in 11 countries on the continent of Africa. And look, they were doing big business in Nigeria, doing really well in Egypt. And there were a few other places they were doing pretty okay. What I found, which was interesting, was the GDP of a country and the level of education of a country doesn't always directly translate to a business matching that level of aptitude. And a lot of that has to do with a number of different things. One of the challenges you have with companies here on the continent, especially multinational companies, is they end up having leadership that is European, in Europe, who don't understand the context on the ground. You know, many of them are like management consultants. I worked at, McKinsey and Company, or I worked at Deloitte. And so they think they know how to run a business. And even though I've never worked as a consultant, I don't have my MBA. I knew better how to make decisions on businesses than a lot of them did. And it shows in how they were handling the people on the ground in Ghana. There were so many challenges that we ran into because they were making decisions from there about what should be happening here without actually having visited in like the last 3 years. And so you can find these large multinational companies here. You decide you want to work for one because you want to get the experience here on the continent. The pay is abysmal. I mean, I was paid I got paid $10,000 less than I got paid my first job out of college. That's how much I was getting paid in that role. And so that's just something to keep in mind, right? If you're deciding to work here on the continent, you want to get that experience, you should be working to learn, not to earn, depending on how exactly what kind of work you've done prior to moving here, right? For some people, it might be an upward move. Some people it might be a parallel move. For me, I was working for less than a quarter of what I worked in my previous job. So that was one experience. But one of the things that I learned from that is I gained a lot of an understanding and a network in Ghana and then around the continent of Africa. So even though I got paid pennies, and look, let me say this, right? I should be grateful because I actually got paid, right? And I am grateful for the opportunity for sure. But I got way more out of that situation in terms of the learning experience than I ever could have had doing anything else but that. You kind of have to be working at a company here to really get a feel for what people's lives are like every single day. People who are educated, uneducated, people who have left and who have come back, people who have never left, right? And you really get an understanding of what the mindset might be like. You get an understanding of what day to day is like. You see the challenges on the ground, and then you build a network. That network is invaluable, right? Because now I have a network of clients, people who've worked at the different banks, the different companies there, and then people who I worked with as colleagues who have now moved on to other companies, Yango, Bolt, Glovo. If you're in Ghana, I know people who work at all those places now. And so now I built a network of people who now are across industries in Ghana, and I'm working to try to build those kinds of relationships here in Sierra Leone, and of course in Nigeria, and then everywhere else I go around the continent. So I say that, of course, it was met with challenges, right? Living and working in Ghana in that role, but I also gained a lot from that experience. So I do want to mention that. That's one. Then two, I also worked for a US-based company that I was pitching to convince them to expand to the continent of Africa. That was also another experience. Now, that company had zero context for Africa. I mean, if you heard the things that people would say, and I mentioned this on my live a while back, like people ask me about the animals I see every day, um, just like the off-color statements that people would say about Africa and their little understanding of the continent was crazy. So it was a lot of education I had to do. And all in all, in the end, they abandoned the project of moving of expanding to the continent of Africa. And so that was another learning experience and another frustration, right? And it was constantly like I was justifying living in Africa. Like I had to justify like why I'm living here to people throughout that process. And that was a little frustrating. And then also was frustrating to get them to understand the value of the continent, right? So many people's idea of Africa is the 3 a.m. infomercials of like feed the children or save the children or whatever, and not really understanding the true value of the marketplace you have here. And so, that was another experience that I had, where it was another learning experience working and living on the continent. So now we've talked about frustrations with the contracting and building. We've talked about frustrations in my career and working here. Let's talk about frustrations with starting a business and building a business here, specifically in Sierra Leone. And we can also talk about in Ghana as well. I haven't had a business in Sierra Leone, but I've talked to business owners. Every business that you're going to start here is very capital intensive. Even businesses that are not supposed to be capital intensive and did not have overhead. Why is that? Okay. Many people here need to see tangible results before they work with you. And it can't be like tangible adjacent results. They need to see someone locally. So what do I mean by that? So I'm pitching people on my ability to be able to grow your social media platform, right? I have Authentic African Media Group. As you guys can see, I have over 200,000 followers across all platforms, right? We've talked about this earlier. 20,000 on Instagram, 20,000 on TikTok, 13,500 on YouTube, 160 some thousand on Instagram, and then the subsequent platforms, another 40,000, right? If you add them all up, right? Quite a substantial following on my own personal brand, which I don't focus on as much, and the business itself. Now, I go and speak to someone that someone has made an introduction to. I show them, where I am right now. I met them in April. I had 100 in April. I think I had just over 100,000 followers on Instagram. I went back the other week. I showed them I have 162,000. And instead of them saying, you know what, clearly you know what you're doing, they're saying to me, one, they want to pay me the equivalent to $150 a month to help them run their social media, four pieces of content. I think it's 4 pieces of content a day that they want me that I was supposed to come up with, and also train their team and make sure their team understands everything they need to know for $150 a month. Now, this is a company that has spent $4,000+ on certain things before, and they're coming to me with $150 because that's just what they think they should do. I would imagine if I had complexion protection and I was someone else, they may have come to them with a real rate. But that is one of the challenges that you might have here is someone sees you as a Sierra Leonean and they devalue you as an African from the diaspora coming here. Sometimes they can devalue you. Sometimes they inflate your value. Sometimes they devalue you. So imagine I know how much they've spent on other things and they want to offer me $150 per month, and they spend over $4,000 for one event, right? For example, which is in the realm of marketing, all in the same realm of marketing. So we're not talking about for something else. This is all around marketing. So John, we're not talking about Ghana right now. So I know, so John is a very big Nigeria fan. He always hates that we talk about Ghana. So anyway, So that's one of the major challenges, right? Is that you can run into that. And so one of the pieces of advice that I was given, which was really good advice, was sometimes you have to physically invest in a, an activation of some sort and then show them the physical product, tangible, something physical and tangible that they can agree to buy, right? So like if you're going to pitch someone on building a website, you might want to do a website and then show them the website. Like here, this is a website I would do for you. You want to pay for this. Otherwise, you keep pitching them over and over again. You keep showing them PowerPoint presentations. You keep meeting them. They don't do it. But if you have the website already done and say, hey, look, you can do this website, that's an example of something, right? This advice that I was given, this was a person who threw an event, came out of their own pocket, through the event, and then as the event was going on, they were able to get the company to invest further down the line after they had already gone through the process of finding sponsors. They were able to get discounts on alcohol, all these different things, and they were already well underway. Then the company they were pitching was like, all right, we're ready to get involved. There was a concert here last year that's coming back again. I remember talking to one of the people that was on it. They had to pay the two artists first. Two artists, they had to pay out of their pocket first, have them post on the Instagram, hey, what's up, guys? I'm coming to Sierra Leone for this festival. My name is blah, 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 blah. And then they were able to get investment from some of the local brands. It's just how it works here. So you need to have startup capital and invest in your business, especially if you're pitching brands or businesses here and you're expecting them to give you funding. Even if you are working directly with direct to consumer, like if you're, if you have a provision shop or you're building a business where you're dealing with consumers directly, you're going to have to ship stuff here, right? You're not going to be able to build up the demand first, then go buy it and then bring it. Because by that time, it's going to be here in a month, 3 weeks, 14 days. It's too long. That person's already went and bought the thing that they wanted to buy. So you're going to have to buy stuff and bring it, which means you're going to spend a significant amount of money to bring stuff here. So, so those are all very important things that you should know about starting and running a business here on the continent. And when I say on the continent, I'm almost always speaking specifically to my experience in Sierra Leone and in Ghana. And sometimes I will also give you my experience in Nigeria with some conversations and some elements of what we talk about, because I've worked with Nigerians living in Ghana or in Sierra Leone. I've worked with Nigerians in Nigeria. One of my social media managers is in Nigeria right now. And one of my former social media managers is in Nigeria. So it's so I can speak intelligently about certain elements of the experience in Nigeria. It's a very big country, very different from anywhere else. So I can't speak for everybody there, but sometimes I'll make mention of things there. All right. While we're on the topic of business, there was a question from Mosey Maine, and he asked, what about farming? How capital intensive would it be? Yeah, it's going to be capital intensive. For one, obviously buying the land. Two, keeping someone on the land. You're going to have to pay people. And depending on where you buy the land and how good they are at farming will determine how much extra you end up spending. Just keep in mind that with any business here, there's what I call taxes and commissions, right? Taxes and commissions is what we're going to call them. There are the actual taxes, right? Government taxes. Then there are also other taxes. What I mean by that is like the tax of like someone takes a little bit out. So they say this thing is going to cost $1,000 when really that thing might cost $800. They took their little $200 tax, their own little tax, right? And so you get taxed a little bit here and there. It happens. Somebody just made that mistake with somebody here. I just saw it wasn't a lot of money, thank goodness, but $100 was spent to give to someone to fix a vehicle, when really all that was needed was $15 of that $100 was needed to fix the vehicle. The person spent about $60, and the other $40 vanished. Just poof, into thin air. That's the tax. That's the tax I'm talking about. And of course, his excuse was, oh, I thought it was supposed to be for me no, it was all for the car. And that was a tax. And that's just how it works. Just taxed it. Boom, gone. So there are those taxes. Then there are the commissions where, throughout the process, people who are helping you through the process. So somebody who has to stamp a paper, if you're going through a process of getting your business registered, anybody who has to stamp or sign, wow, lights don't go. Again. All you can see is my teeth and my eyes, the white of my eyes. So yeah, I mean, look, what happens a ton of times is you are going to different offices in different places, and you are required to get certain signatures. And in order to expedite that process or to move it, you have to then spend a little bit of money, right? $5 here, $10 there, $5 here. Like even for so the land that I have in Bo Kenema area, there are two people that have their commissions, right? So those two folks, right? One is the person who is taking it all around internally. They have their own fee. His boss is going to sign the paper. That's all he's going to do, sign it. But he needs money, probably the equivalent to a couple $100 that he's going to get. So the first person to sign is getting a couple $100 or about $100, $150. The second person is going to get about $150 as well, $200. And it's just how it works, right? Everyone has their commissions. So you got your commissions and then you got your taxes. Now, these are things that you aren't going to be generally used to in the Western world, right? The price that it says online to do that thing is the price that you pay. You wait however long it takes. You get what you get back. You start your business or you do your thing. But here, it doesn't work that way. You also need to invest in backup plans. So as you can imagine, this hotel has a pretty good, efficient backup energy source, right? Because the light has now gone and off, I think 3 or 4 times since I've gone live 47 minutes ago. And it's just an automatic switch where it comes on and it goes live. I don't know right now if we're working on the generator power or if it's on the local electricity power, but it's gone on and off a number of different times. So you're going to need to have a backup water supply, a backup supply of electricity, all of these things, especially if you're going to be doing farming, right? Because you're going to be out in the middle of somewhere. You're probably going to have equipment and things like that. And so you're going to need to have a backup water supply. You're going to need to have a backup energy supply for the different things that you're going to have out on land, on site. So it's hard to say how capital intensive it will be because it all depends on how much land you're buying and what exactly it is that you're doing. But just keep in mind that if anybody gives you any estimates on anything, keep in mind there are probably going to be some additional fees you're going to have to pay. So that's some of the ideas and some thoughts around starting a business. Tim Black is Tim. We're just talking about what 7 months in Sierra Leone has been like, and just some overall advice I'm giving for the things that have happened. Like that he said, hit that like button. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that thumbs up. So Kika Moonlight, based in the Delta state of Nigeria, has mentioned make sure you have solar power or a generator as a backup. Of course, she also understands being in Nigeria. They frequently have power outages around the country, as we do here in Sierra Leone. Not as frequent as Ghana, which I know John doesn't like to hear, one of our very hardcore Nigerian supporters on the live. Kika Moonlight seems to think the most expensive part of farming is land, maybe the land purchase, I guess what you're saying. There's a lot of questions and a lot of conversations between John in the chat and other people. We're not gonna get into that because that's gonna get off topic. But John, relax. I know we know you love Nigeria, but you don't have to hate on Ghana so much. By the way, guys, on that note, Within the next 6 months, I'm doing a video on why Ghanaians and Nigerians hate each other so much and what has been happening in terms of the diplomatic efforts to try to bring these groups together. And so we're definitely going to talk about this because, listen, there's some history and it goes back. It goes back to the 60s. And yes, spoiler alert, Ghana started it. That's all we're going to say. That's all we're going to say. So anyway, that's on the business front, right? Always make sure you have additional resources financially. Because if you do not, you are going to run into many challenges. So any business that you have, you always have to have additional financial resources around. But I mentioned this before. Every person I know who started a business here not only had a large capital investment to begin with, but they also continue to have capital investments along the way. Every business you're going to have here is going to require additional capital investment. And you are going to need to love what it is that you do, because you're going to run into a lot of challenges. You're going to definitely run into a lot of challenges. Real quick, I want to shout out again, Pearl Hotel, Lumley Road. They, of course, have provided me with their penthouse suite that you can see here. See the nice furniture. Those of you who are watching on lives, I'm going to make sure that you guys can see it all here. Really nice furniture, nice penthouse suite here. So yeah, I want Pearl Hotel for allowing me to use this space because they don't have to, and they choose to allow me to use it weekly. So I have to shout them out. As you guys know, I've stayed here on many of occasions, not in this particular penthouse suite, but I've stayed in other suites before when I was out here spending that money. And so I definitely recommend, if you have the finances to stay here, it's a nice place. So that is on the business front. So we've now talked about the experience building. We've talked about my experience working. We've talked about business experience. Helen Brown says hello. What's up, Helen? So now let's talk about dating on the continent of Africa. People like to talk about this a lot. And since we're not live on LinkedIn, we're going to talk a little bit about dating as well. So, and we're going to keep this very high level, very, very high level. But we're not just going to speak about myself. We're going to speak about people's experiences. So I've now talked to a number of different people, whether through this process or people that I meet. And there are a lot of stories that are firsts for me, like the first time I've heard a story like this. And a lot of people that I talk to in the States are shocked by some of the things that they hear here. So a couple things about dating here. We'll talk about Sierra Leone, and we'll talk about Ghana, and we'll talk a little bit about Nigeria as well. One of the things that is a constant here is that the way people look at relationships in general is these two ways. Most women will say most men are going to cheat. And most men will say most women, all they want is your money. Now, that might be familiar to you. You might have heard that living in the West, right? I think it's a little bit, and in certain cities in the West, you see this on a very high level. So like Miami, Los Angeles, right? Where you have people with great amounts of wealth who practice and engage in infidelity. And then you also have people moving to those cities to find people who have a lot of wealth. So Miami and Los Angeles, I think, are two cities where this happens frequently, and there's a lot of content creators talking about this stuff. So I just want to be clear, this is not the only place this happens. But I do think it's a little bit more explicit here. It's even more out in the open here when you come here. I think those people who date casually Most people in their 20s and 30s, most men in their 20s and 30s are casual daters, especially black men. As far as my experience, mostly date casually, not always excited to be in long-term relationships. Of course, many people do want to be in them, but just talking about generally, especially in your 20s. On the continent of Africa, specifically in West Africa, and in the 3 countries that I've mentioned, and I've heard in some other places as well, if you want to date casually, there is a financial incentive to do so. So, for instance, if you are a guy who wants to date casually and you're not looking for a relationship, you are expected at the very least to a lot of times compensate a young lady for her time if you are hanging out casually. That is definitely a part of the casual dating experience here. You'll also find on the dating apps, there are people who are specifically looking to work as adult workers in that way, specifically on the apps. And that's just how it is. It was shocking to me when I first got here. It can be shocking to many people. That's just how it works. And then on the other end, for women, understanding when they're dating locally, a lot of times you'll have people who date around. And even if they say you're in a relationship, they might even tell you they love you. They may have others. And they may lie. Lying is a big part of the culture around dating a lot of times here. Now, I'm speaking in general. You can always find exceptions to the rule. Anytime I have a conversation with someone, they always tell me, oh, that's not everyone. I know it's not everyone. But trust me, it's a lot of people. Okay, so what do I mean by lying? I think that there's a perpetual cycle of people lying, so people lie. People lie, so people lie. I met someone earlier this year or last year. And one of the things they told me was, I used to be very honest with my ex-boyfriend, and it came back to bite me. So now I'm not as honest. Now, that person told me they were honest with me, but how can I really know, right? I tend to be a very honest person. That's kind of my calling card. It's like I'm always honest, upfront and honest, always. But what's interesting is like when you catch people in a lie, and they continue to lie, or that they're lying, but they don't know that they're lying, and they continue to lie. It's just a big part of what you find here. And so you are going to have to weed through things and spend a good amount of time vetting people here to ensure that you are finding someone genuine. And the thing is that families get in on the lie. So it can't always be, well, their mother says they're like this, or their father says they're like this, or their brother or their sister or their in-laws say they're like this. Because trust me, for reasons that are known to those people, they will all join in on the lying and the deceit. And so you have to just be very careful, and you have to just be mindful, and you have to do some serious vetting. So I always caveat that with the fact that that's not everyone. And I always like to speak about it from both genders, so I don't sound like I'm red pill, or I'm just talking about women in a bad way, or that I'm only talking about men in a certain way. This is just how it is known. And it's like a self-perpetuating cycle, right? I think a lot of women lie because a lot of men have lied in the past. And so, I guess maybe the men started it. I don't know. So maybe that's the one thing we can probably say, I guess. But trust me, it's a thing. And in certain countries, you are expected as a male to provide financially immediately, right? Immediately, even if it is a serious dating situation. So if you plan to propose one day, you are moving down the direction of a serious relationship, a serious partnership. In many cases, you are expected to spend money. That may be on rent, rent is paid yearly, and it's paid as a large lump sum. So a lot of times people need help with paying rent. That may be doctor's fees. That may be siblings' school fees. These are all things that add up, and these are costs that you, as the male, if you decide to date a young lady here, will be asked to help with or may be solely responsible for. That is just part of what is part of the process, right? For those of you who are women and who are planning to come here and date, I think one of the things you'll find out is people tend to be more traditional here. The men tend to be more traditional in terms of how they approach relationships. Instagram is going to cut me off in less than 10 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back live on Instagram for part 2 to finish the rest of this. In 3, 2, 1. All right. So we had a significant amount of people join on Instagram. That was great. But of course, it just went off. So you guys going to give me a second here to just get us back live on Instagram. But if you guys are finding this interesting so far, give me a thumbs up. I want some thumbs up in the chats if you're finding this helpful. If you're finding this helpful, thumbs up in the chat. I want to see thumbs up in the chat if you're finding this helpful. If you're learning anything, if you've experienced anything like what I'm talking about, I want to see a thumbs up in the chat. Tell me your experience. If anything I said resonates with you. Because man, it has been an interesting experience. But I also had a really good dating experience, I'll mention that myself and one positive example. I'm really good friends to this day with someone who I dated here. We did not work out because of like some serious cultural differences, and specifically just more, you know what? Let's wait till we get back live on Instagram. And real quickly on Instagram, I am going to give them a recap. All right, so we are back live on Instagram for part 2. We've been live everywhere else already. But back on Instagram, for those of you who are watching and those who are watching the replay, we are talking about what it's been like for me the last 7 months living in Sierra Leone, having been in Ghana, what my experience has been like, and some of the things that I've learned throughout this process. And for those of you who are considering moving or visiting, just to give you guys some insight into different things. Just as a recap for everybody, first thing we talked about was my construction process. So if you guys are watching on Instagram, go back and watch part 1 about the construction and all the challenges I had with that. If you guys want to know about what the work experience was like, I've had a full-time job living on the continent. So I'm more than happy to tell you about what that experience was like. And we talked about it on part 1, and we talked about it here. And then we also talked about what it's like starting a business here. What are the things you have to think about? And then lastly, we're talking about dating. So we're on the dating topic right now. But really quickly, it looks like there's a couple people who are finding this useful. I got some thumbs up in the chat. Good. You guys are finding this useful. Yes, the lies are on a different level is what Highly Favored said. Haji Ba says, hey, Joe, come 2024, Sierra Leone will be seeing big improvement in electricity as they have signed a new agreement with Guinea. Guinea has huge energy. Great. I'm happy to hear that. That's good to hear. Tim Black says this is helpful and useful. Good. Did I get some thumbs up in the chat from IG? Oh, you guys have just came on. Kay says, I'm an authentic African. Shout out to you for being an authentic African. That's what I like to hear. Okay. So we're talking about dating. We're talking about some of the challenges dating, whether that is, on the continent of Africa, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, everything that I mentioned so far are challenges that you see on both ends. So now we were talking about women dating men here on the continent. What we're talking about is men on the continent tend to be more traditional, right? So in the sense that they are used to taking care of everything financially, used to being the leader of the household, and many times, depending on the age, but generally many times uninterrupted or undisputed leader of the household, right? It's not always a group decision. Now, things are changing with the younger generations, right? Because they have access to more information. Westernized culture has permeated across West Africa. But in general, that is still how people tend to roll, is in more traditional um, gender roles within the household. Part of that is because finances are hard to come by for a lot of women here on the continent, specifically in the private sector. And then just because we're just closer to who we are biologically, right? So yeah, so Champion is asking how the laws are. It's hard to answer that question because it depends on the country and it depends on which laws you're speaking about. But if you have a specific law you want to ask about in a specific country, I may be able to tell you. Let's talk about it. So yeah. So these are all things that I think are really important to take into consideration, right? Is in the dating market here in West Africa, there are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration that if you're from the West, you wouldn't think about. It's just things that just don't come up in your day-to-day life as often. Like there are many parts of the United States that are not at all like Los Angeles or Miami. But let's look at it this way. Without getting too far into it, when you think about social media like Instagram, right? And you think about some of the more attractive young ladies on Instagram who end up flying to Dubai. Sometimes they go to other parts of the UAE. Sometimes they go to Saudi Arabia. Sometimes they fly to Nigeria or Ghana. They are flown out a lot of times to be paid for those services, right? And a lot of high net worth individuals lead with their wallet, just like a lot of young ladies here lead with their physical appearance. A lot of people in these areas lead with their wallet. And so, that happens in certain areas. And then it happens across the continent of Africa as well. And so it's not in every situation, but it does happen in many instances. And the reason why I make sure that I mention that is because there is, some people call them slay mamas. Sometimes some people call the young ladies slay queens, right? The reason why I mention that is because they are public figures and they speak about their lifestyles online. And so because they do, there are many people picking up those habits in their day-to-day lives, right? And so that ends up happening where you are expected to do those same things when you're dating. Yeah. And so Kika Moonlight saying, when you don't have as much stuff as some of your peers, you're labeled as village girls. Yeah, so a village person, a village girl, village boy, it's kind of like a derogatory term. Like you're like a little village person. You have no concept of anything bigger, like the big cities. You're a village person, which I don't know. I think that's kind of a crazy derogatory term to call somebody a village person. But it's like when you're in the States and you know people who are like from the suburbs, and like people in the cities are like, look at these suburbanites walking around New York City, don't even know where they're going, kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing. People do that here. John is very serious about ensuring that Nigeria doesn't have any negative comments about it. Hey, listen, I love my experience in Nigeria. I have a good friend some good friends in Nigeria and Nigerian friends. The country is a big country. Not everything that I speak about is specific to everywhere in the country. Just like when you talk about America, it's not all of the United States, but there are certain things that are pretty well known to be the case. And one of the things that Nigeria has challenges with in many of the states is light. Just like Sierra Leone, Ghana has some light issues too. And other countries too have light issues. So it's just a thing. It's something that we know to be true. I'm not, that doesn't mean that I can't love Nigeria or specifically Lagos, because I only spent time on VI and in Lagos. It was a great time. But I did have some challenges with light. And I've worked with people who from all over the country of Nigeria. And I've met people from Delta State now here. I've met people from Ogun. Is it Ogun? Obviously from Kano, from Abuja. Abuja apparently has really good light for most of the time, as far as I understand. But yeah, it has its challenges, but I don't want to get off on a tangent because I don't want to just be just talking about that. But when I talk about these things, it's based on my personal experience or people that I know. It's not like I'm just guessing about these things. This is part of my everyday experience. Living on the continent, I come in contact with a lot of people from different parts of the continent of Africa, right? I mean, that's just what's going to happen living here. I have some Ugandan friends. Wow. Again, lights don't go. So yeah. Anyway, so for those of you who wanted to go live with me, there were a couple people that were trying to go live. Kika Moonlight, we've gone live a couple of times. Let's see if there's anybody else who wants to go live. Anybody else want to go live with me right now so we can talk for a little bit? I do have this this entrepreneurship week, and I do have a client. Oh, while we work on that, see if there's anybody who wants to go live. Really good news. So the Authentic African Media Group is welcoming in 2 new clients this week. Signed contracts. Payment has been made. So 2 new clients. One is called Ofino Naturals. They are a hair and skincare product line. The founder and CEO spent a significant amount of time in the States, significant amount of time in Sierra Leone. She has a school where she teaches people, cosmetology and hair and all that kind of stuff. So she has natural skincare products and natural hair products. So that's one, which is really, really dope. So Fino Naturals. And I look forward to having her on a live and doing an interview and running the social media for her. So I'll be updating you guys when that comes out. We're going to be telling you guys to follow for sure. Make sure you're going to like, follow, and subscribe and follow those folks. So we have those. That's one. So that's Ofino Naturals. And then 2, we have another company called Green Compost, which is a composting company who does business to business. So most of the clients are farmers. So for those of you asking about farming, really interesting stuff they do with chicken excrements and specific formulas that is very scientific and chemist kind of stuff, which I don't really totally understand. I did take chemistry in college, but that's the full extent of my knowledge. I know that H2O2 is hydrogen peroxide and H2O is water. I know that. But yeah, so we have Green Compost, really interesting stuff that they're doing. And technically, I have 2 other clients that are supposed to be starting this week, but Salon Man time. You guys know how that goes. When it comes to Sierra Leone, things don't happen right as they are supposed to. But I have payment in hand. Deposit was made today with one. Check was given today for the other. Contract was signed this weekend. So we are good to go with those 2. So as of December 1st, we start posting. We're doing the pre-posting time right now. We're in the middle of that now, just to ensure that we get everything ready to go. But we'll go live with those 2 folks. And then we have the other 2 coming very shortly. So Jerry Campbell saying, nice, congrats, well-deserved, thank you. Miss P says, congratulations, Joe, thank you. Yes, I'm really excited to take this new agency into a new space. I mean, I've had a social media agency before based in the States when I was living in Los Angeles. And I mentioned this to you all before. I was working with a client that had an artist that was 14 years old, and she was singing music that was way too mature for her age. And when I mentioned it to the owner of the record label, he kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And he cited Britney Spears, like that matters to me, because she was 16 when Oops, I Did It Again came out. I don't care. And then the parents were allowing adults to comment stuff that they shouldn't be commenting on her posts. And that was just like, all right, I can't work with you guys. So I fired that client and decided I wasn't going to work with them, which was unfortunate for me because that client owned 3 cannabis dispensaries. And that's the reason why I reached out to him in the first place. But, he chose to focus on the record label. And it was just disgusting to me, to be honest with you. So I decided against that. And then I had a couple other clients that just weren't working out. So I canceled the idea of a social media agency altogether. I was like, I'm not doing this ever again. And then I moved to the continent and I realized there's a need for it. And I'm passionate about the companies that are here. So I restarted and relaunched my social media agency under new branding. You know, the agency previously was Momentum Media, you know, and that was the social media agency previously. And I operated as Forever Green Media in Los Angeles. So I was doing business as Forever Green Media. And now here under the Hatagua Enterprises umbrella, we have the Authentic African Media Group. So AAMG, which is who is going to be responsible for all of the management of the social media and everything we do coming out of Authentic African. Merch is going to be Authentic African Media Group, the advertising agency, working with influencers such as myself. I'm also an influencer. All of that is under the Authentic African Media Group. And so I'm really excited to announce that we finally have some clients starting. Imagine my first meeting with a company that introduced me to these clients was in May. I met with them in May. We had verbal agreements from all of these businesses by June and July to start. But because of things that were out of their control, we're not even starting until November 13th. So these are the kinds of things you need to think about when you have a business here, right? You know, and just going back to the earlier discussion about starting a business, right? When I decided to start a business, I was like, okay, like verbal commit, they're ready to go. Let's get started. You know, I'd meet with a company. I'm like, okay, you guys are ready to go? Let's go. Send you the contract, send you stuff, move on to my next conversation, right? Then I realized you got to still nurture that earlier discussion all the way through for 6 months, because you never know when it's finally going to sign and go live. And then the next piece is the amount of money people are willing to pay or have the budget to pay. And so that's the other piece of it, right? Is that, you know, obviously I can't charge what I was charging in the United States. I was charging $2,000 per month per client, $2,000 minimum. Right now, as I'm getting off the ground, I cannot charge that amount. So iTuber 12, it's been a while since you've been here. So what up though? What's up? iTuber, are you in Detroit? That's usually what people in Detroit say. Africa Emerge says, we're all Africans. Let's stop the infighting. Yes. That's to all the people who are fighting with John and John fighting with people about Nigeria in the YouTube chat, which is pretty interesting. I'm not putting it on the screen, but they've been going in. Africa Emerge says, peace and love, fam. What's up, Africa Emerged? All right, cool. So we've been live now for an hour and 17 minutes. We did a part 1 on Instagram for an hour, 17 minutes for part 2. I think we can draw this thing to a close. Does anybody have any questions for me? You know, I want to answer any questions you might have. Do you guys have any questions for me before we bring this thing to a close? And by the way, I thank you all for joining. We got quite a substantial amount of people. I think on the first Instagram Live, we had 500 or so people join at some point. YouTube, we've had over 100 people join. On TikTok, we've had over 100 people join the live. So thank you guys for joining. And then on YouTube and Facebook, excuse me, we have like between 40 and 50 people. It's not bad. So all in all, I think we've had about 700, 800 people or so join the live at some point in time throughout the live. So I appreciate all of you who joined the live. You guys may not see that on individual platforms, how many join all together, but I have the metrics and I always look at it. So it shows that this has been helpful to you guys and the audience. As an audience, you guys have also been adding to the conversation, which makes this go on more and to be able to give people the value that they're looking for. So iTuber says, I missed the whole thing then. House updates, what country are you in now? So real quick, house updates. So I'll give you that update. I am in the house. We in the house. Wow, I always do that. I do that with my friends. It's very strange when I do it live. So I got to stop doing that. But I'm in the house. Everything refers back to a song. So I'm in the house now. I'm in the guest house. And by the way, light has gone again. So I'm in the guest house, live and direct in the guest house. Well, not live and direct from the guest house right now. Right at this very moment, I'm in the Pearl Hotel penthouse suite at Pearl Hotel on Lumley Beach Road in Sierra Leone. But I have moved in to the guest house in Freetown, Sierra Leone. So yes, I moved in, and iTuber did know what I was talking about when I said we in the house. That was Kanye. Hey, yeah. So yeah, so the house is underway. We're working on the rooftop this week. Actually, have to give some money to the contractor tomorrow. More money, more problems. Another reference for a song. So Mr. KK said, so in summary, where are you ready to leave to? I'm ready to go on a quick trip. That's what I was talking about when I said I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to go on a quick trip, and I'm ready to go to the States, actually, believe it or not. At least for like a week or two, maybe a month or so. There's some things I need to do there. I also need to go to Nigeria. Absolutely need to go to Nigeria ASAP, specifically Lagos for now. And I need to go to Accra. So these are all places that are on the list of places to go. Kika Moonlight says, get to the Delta region. I'll get to Delta whenever I can. It's going to be difficult. Roots Farm had a question that I neglected. So let me get to this. Now that you know what you know, if you could go back in time to when you were much younger, what would you do differently to prepare for your repatriation to Sierra Leone? This is a great question. And this is a question for me coming to the continent in general. Now that I know what I know, first things first, the first big commission check I ever got, you guys won't believe this, but it all went to alcohol. Maybe you would believe this. It all went to alcohol. I got a $12,000 check when I was 25 years old. I just turned 24. Just turned 24. I got a $12,000 commission check, $8,000 after tax. I gave $2,000 to my cousin to make it more money. I gave $500 as a loan to someone else. I spent $1,000 in one night on bottles and dinner. I bought Prada shoes, Gucci shoes, all kinds of stuff. Before you knew it, within 2 months, money was gone. That, if I knew what I know now, that was in 2008. That was in 2008. I would have taken 4,000 of that, and I would have bought some plots of land here in Freetown. So that's what I would have done. I would have started by doing that. Throughout the years, my income grew significantly. I'm not gonna tell you how much I was making, but let's just say I worked at a company that got purchased. I got acquired by a company in China, and I was only there for 2 years, and I got a $75,000 check, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy. I got a $75,000 check a year after that acquisition. Can you imagine $75,000? Now after taxes, it was probably like 50 something. But like just to look at that $50,000 in your bank account, it was so crazy to look at it. Just to look at the check, to look at that money in the account. I was just like, and you know what I did over the next 6 to 12 months? I did acquire a piece of land in Freetown. I did. So I didn't just completely waste it. I did have a little bit better knowledge of what to do. But I would have bought a lot more land, and I would have built a whole lot more. I would have taken that money and put it right into the building project and would have built already and would have been renting a unit. So I would have never had to stay in hotels when I would come to visit and all of that. Throughout the years, I've gotten, $20,000 commission check here, $15,000 commission check there. All of those checks, instead of putting money into a new apartment that I was spending $3,600 a month on in a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, in Brooklyn or in downtown LA. It would have gone to land purchases in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya. So if I could go back in time, those are the things I would have done. I would have made sure that I bought land, that I had built on that land, that I was renting that land, and that I had income. Those are the things I would have done to prepare for my repatriation, so that I had income already coming in from multiple sources in multiple countries. That's one of the things I would have done differently. One of the other things I would have done differently is I would have ignored my former bosses, because we had unlimited vacation days, who told me that I could only spend 9 days in Sierra Leone, each of those trips in 2017, 2018, and 2019. 2017 once, 2018 twice, 2019 twice. So I did 5 trips while working at Hulu, and my boss would always tell me, you can only go, basically you could bookend 2 weekends, and that's how long you can go. And so I would have ignored it, and I would have just stayed longer, because it would have given me more context for things. I would have been able to build networks stronger, and I would have been able to do more. And I would have been visiting a whole lot more throughout my younger years. From the first time I came as an adult was 2010. I did not come back again until 2017. So there was a 7-year gap between the first time I came as an adult and the time I came back again. One of the things I would be doing differently is each year from 2010 to 2017, I would have made sure I had the money to come to Sierra Leone and visit. I absolutely would have kept coming back every single year, because that would have set me up for a smoother transition now, because some of the challenges that I've dealt with, these are challenges that everybody would deal with, but I would have better equipped myself to deal with some of these challenges. So that's a really good question. But that's what I would have done. I would have also, the last thing I would say is I would have also started a business earlier, because I would have had more knowledge to start that business. So I would have been able to continue to build a network for that business, so that now I could have the influx of clients that I have now, that I'm starting to get now, because I only have 2 just started this week. But I would have much more clients, and I would have more folks that I could hire and make a part of the team. Really good question. I appreciate that question. Well thought out. Anita's saying, hit that like button. Marie Shai says, I wish I could have done the same. Yeah, come in and invested first. Yes, for sure. Yeah, all right, cool. I think that's it. Any other questions? And we got many people still joining. I appreciate you guys joining. Watch the replay for everything. This has been an engaging discussion with lots of interesting elements, especially if you're reading the comments on YouTube. I will implore all of you who are watching on TikTok and on Instagram, is when you get a chance, head over to YouTube and check the comments on this live video when the replay is back live. Somebody also said, make sure to repost the replay. The replay will be back live for sure. It'll be on all platforms, so don't worry. You'll be able to watch this in its entirety. If you're watching on Instagram, it's going to be in 2 parts. So you go back and watch part 1 and then come back and watch part 2. If you're watching on TikTok and all the other platforms, the replay is all the way. It'll be all one long video. All right. iTuber says Boland updates. Boland updates. Yeah, the main update is this. So we had a unlicensed surveyor do the surveying. We needed a licensed surveyor to do the survey to finalize the conveyance. That's all done. The people who were handling the process had to leave the country because of some family tragedy. And so it's just been on hold, but the conveyance will be completed in the next week or so. I know I've been saying that for months now, but now that I know the process and I know the players and parties involved, it can be done a whole lot faster now. So Mr. KK says, you're always catfishing. No, it's not catfishing. Catfishing would be if I pretended to look like something I don't look like online. So that would mean if I used someone else's picture and I showed up on the YouTube videos or the Instagram lives, right? That's catfishing. I think what you're trying to say is clickbait. And look, you know, I still talking about some of the challenges that we see here, but I'm not going to ever bash the continent of Africa because I want people to move here, and I honestly think it's the best decision I've ever made. But yes, of course, I use catchy titles and thumbnails to get people to join the live because I have good information to give. And you know what? You know what we're gonna do, guys? Let's do a quick experiment for you guys. I want to show you guys something. I think this is gonna be really interesting because people always say to me, you know, Joe, why do you always title your videos the way you do? When you title your videos, why do you do that? You know, people always ask me that question. They say, you know, because it feels like you're clickbaiting. Why do you use clickbait? Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples of why I title the videos the way I do. And then right after this, I'm going to get to iTuber's next question. But for Mr. KK, I want to make sure I answer this for you because I think you'll find this interesting. You know, from like it's fascinating to me how these things show up. Okay, so you guys are seeing the back office of my YouTube right now. Saying you all so okay, so you're seeing the back office of my YouTube, right? Yes, you are. On the right hand side, you can see the views, right? So Africa news: Biden drops Gabon, Niger, Uganda, and Congo Russia nuclear power plant. Now this isn't necessarily a negative story, but 957 views, right? How to reach 4 million Africans, 284 views. Move to Africa now, right? Like this is a positive story. You need to move to Africa right now. It's a cash machine. 662 views. Don't move to Africa. 4,000 views. It's a 2-hour-long live. What I think of Tanzania, 472 views. Bad news update, 1,000 views. More terrible news, 4,200 views. Now, I'm trying to reach as big of an audience as possible to ensure that I'm affecting as many lives as possible. So I have to operate within the confines of how people's psychology works and how the platforms work. So of course, I title my videos in a way that is going to draw you in and get your attention. I'm never going to cross any moral lines that I have for myself. But you guys all know how negative news works. And so, Mr. KK, I hope that answers your question as to why you think that I'm always catfishing. Because as you can see, this is why I have to title it the way I do, so that people come on and then they can get this good information. Because I'm still giving good information, right? And judging by the people who gave me the thumbs up earlier that said this was helpful, right? And judging by the number of people that are still on the live, obviously this is useful and this is helpful. But of course, you do have to use the tactics that are required to get into the psychology of different people. And by the way, it doesn't mean I didn't have some challenges here. Like I mentioned all the challenges. I'm just not going to trash West Africa, you know? I'm going to give you the solutions to those challenges, but they were challenges. But remember, I did why you should move to Africa, right? Why you should move got 662 views. The week before, don't move to Africa, got 4,000 views. I mean, it's all right there in the numbers. iTuber12 says, honestly, for you, Joe, Kenya might be a good spot to set up for a year or two. getting Kenyan citizenship is not too crazy either. I think it's around 2 years and paperwork to get it. That could be interesting. My cousin grew up in Nairobi, and he's always told me I need to go there. And I had some really cool coworkers from Kenya as well, that and some other people that I've tried to do business with who also are in Kenya. And I'm supposed to be going to Kenya in a month, so maybe we'll see what that looks like, and see if it makes sense for me to consider it for some time. But I think more than anything, I'll be visiting as often as possible, because I think it's a great place to go for business and for what I'm doing as building the social media agency. I can really do that anywhere on the continent, and I'm really looking to do that as wherever I can. All right. So just adding to my content, a comment about Kenya. There's so many startups that you'll benefit from being there, grow your business, and eventually get East African citizenship while you're there. That's interesting. Yeah, and East African citizenship is great because just like West African citizenship, you can move around ECOWAS communities. East African community is not all of East African countries, but they're adding some new ones. Somalia might be added, so I saw, and then they have many there. So yes, I think you're right about that. Anita H says, when did you say the next conferment will be for November? I actually don't know when it is, to be honest. I know it's coming up in a couple weeks. Somebody said it's around the 20th of this month. So in a couple weeks, I think, is when those folks are coming for their citizenship in Sierra Leone. So Facts Over Fear says, no disrespect, serious. Why does your thumbnail always look so depressing? Still much love. I think I answered this question for you, right? I think I answered it for you, or just now I didn't see your question, but I think I must have just answered it for you, right? Jack says, have you read the Sierra Leone Constitution? Can you own firearms? I've read some elements of the Constitution and amendments to some elements of the Constitution, and you can, but you need to go through a process. Are there building codes in each district? There are specific building codes. You're supposed to get approval from the city to build, but do people do it? That's another question. Do they enforce it? That's a whole other question. But yes. Okay, we already talked about that. Overall, it works for views. It's advertising. Yes. iTuber says you should try Tidal, which does both. Don't move to Africa unless you've done the following. You see, the thing is, if I put don't move to Africa unless you've done the following, it doesn't get as much as if I put don't move to Africa. So I can put unless you've done the following in the content, but I have also I've also tested, A/B tested that as well. And if it's clear that it's not only going to be negative, you have less viewers. And I want everybody who's coming for the negative, because all those people are still getting something good out of it when they're leaving. So even good people still will watch something that's negative, right? And people with good intention will still watch something that's negative. Then they get some good information, and they can go on and pass that information to other people, right? I watch regardless, but I wonder if those numbers are reflective of human nature or YouTube's algorithm. It's both. It's both. That's a great point. So human nature guides the algorithm, right? So negative news travels much faster than positive news, right? If something's negative, people forward it on WhatsApp, people save it, people prepare for the live itself in advance, right? And so when they do that, the algorithm picks it up, and then it gets shown to more people. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. So iTuber says last batch of new citizens before they add a whole bunch of requirements. I don't know the final details though. I don't either, but once we do, I'll make sure I share it with everybody. This is about the citizenship to Sierra Leone that people are asking about. Marie Shai says, hey, is this the Anita H that is part of the village that Dory belongs to in Moyamba? Yes. And so Dory is one of the people, by the way, who does this. Anita, so Marie is part of the same village and got citizenship with Anita. Look at that. See, you guys we're on the same trip. And that's what I mean. I know a lot of you guys are the ones who follow this platform. And so I need to do a better job of knowing more about when all of this stuff is happening. I know it's happening this month. And I'm sure I'll be at Radisson Blue and I'll see everybody as they come in, like happened last year in November. But I want to be there as people come in. So hopefully I'll be around when people come in and land, so I can meet a few of you if you'll be here. Okay. So before light goes out again, I want to say thank you to all who have watched, who have shared, who have commented. Tell your friends, okay? I appreciate you all. This has been really a great conversation. Okay, one real quick thing. iTuber says, last I heard, December 31st will be the last day old Leones will be accepted. So make sure you get rid of those old notes before 2024. That's a good point. And if you leave the country, you cannot change that money if it's old money for something else. I had the old currency for Nigeria, and it's only usable in Nigeria. And I had a bunch of Naira, old Naira, and I couldn't use it, and I wasn't planning to go anytime soon. So I gave it to a Nigerian friend of mine, who now is gonna go spend it in Nigeria. Anyway, okay, Fat Sir Saltish says, are we going to gather? Let's talk about it. You know, in the next week or so, we can do a meet and greet. Since many of you guys are coming, I'll be here. But you guys also have a very crazy schedule, for those of you who are coming for citizenship. So if there's a free day, we can do like a little meet and greet. You guys can let me know. We can do that. All right. I would love to do a tour video on the finished guest house. It's coming soon. Vlog is done. Just doing some edits right now. It'll be coming soon. Also, Gambia videos are finally coming this month. Tanzania videos are coming next month. January is going to be all the stuff that I haven't got a chance to do so far. February is going to be Kenya, depending on the Kenya trip. So that's where we are right now. Okay, so Anita will be back in April when her brother is getting citizenship. I may be around then as well. So maybe we will run into each other in person. All right, guys. With that, thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate you all. If you found this useful, make sure you share this with people. Make sure you give the thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Share this with anybody you know. Save this video, and all of the above. And with that, thanks for watching. See you all on, okay. Wait, one more comment? No? Okay, I know you want to come to Sierra Leone, someone said. All right, see you all in the next video.